Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. The disease our group investigated was amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as ALS. Prior to beginning this project, we were only aware of the horrible side effects of this neurodegenerative disorder. The disorder was discovered by French neurologist Jean-Martin Charcot in 1869, who is considered one of the founding fathers of neurology. He discovered the disease when looking at the damage to the motor neurons, and following his discovery, he deemed the disease fatal. ALS was discovered in 1869, but the disease was brought to the world's attention when famous baseball player Lou Gehrig was diagnosed with the neurodegenerative disease that ended his career. Lou Gehrig was one of the most beloved baseball players of all time, and ALS is still commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. People across the world are affected by this disease. Approximately 5,600 Americans are diagnosed each year. It is estimated that 30,000 Americans are living with ALS at any given time. According to the ALS database, 60% of all patients are men and 93% are all Caucasian. Most diagnoses of ALS occur between the ages of 40 to 70, the average age of diagnosis being 55. ALS is a neurodegenerative disorder that affects nerve cells in the brain and the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord to the muscles throughout the body. This causes a progressive degeneration of the motor neurons, which eventually will lead to the death of those diagnosed. When the motor neurons die, the brain is no longer able to initiate and control the muscles, which causes the diagnosed to lose the ability to have control over their body. The type of inheritance associated with getting ALS is dominant, which means there are only one mutation needed to cause the disease. In regards to genetics, there are two different ways in which someone can develop ALS. It is either sporadic or familial. Sporadic meaning there's no known cause, while familial is associated with a member of the family who has ALS or a similar genetic disease. The dominant form of ALS is with frontotemporal dementia. This form of ALS localizes to chromosome 9q21 and q22. A rare autosomal recessive form of juvenile onset ALS, ALS2, is mapped on chromosome 2q33. A slowly progressing autosomal dominant form of ALS with juvenile onset has been designated as ALS4 and has been mapped to chromosome 9q34. The genetic testing of ALS typically involves taking blood or spitting into a special tube. Testing is typically only useful when a person is diagnosed. Genetic testing may explain whether there is a genetic cause in a family or to see if anyone is a carrier, and it is useful if the family is planning to impregnate by participating in prenatal testing. Early signs may include weakness in muscles, especially in the hands, legs, ankles, and feet, muscle cramps and twitching in certain parts of the body, difficulty holding up your head and controlling your bodily movements. Electromyogram, also known as EMG, is a procedure which requires inserting a needle electrode in multiple muscles, evaluating the electrical activities in muscles while contracted as well as at rest. Nerve conduction studies are also used to measure your nerve's ability to send impulses to other muscles in the body. Other tests include magnetic resonance imaging, also known as MRI, blood and urine tests, lumbar puncture, as well as muscle biopsies to analyze every aspect of the human body involving the spinal cord and looking at potential tumors in the brain. Currently, there is no known cure for ALS. The controversy with the Ice Bucket Challenge is whether or not it is ethical. The challenge includes being dosed in cold water or donating to the ALS program. Here, mankind faces again the most historically argued topic: do we decide with God or with science? ALS does not necessarily always affect one's senses, thinking ability, or mental capacity. People with ALS are in the same type of mental state prior to being diagnosed. It may impair one's ability to speak, and there are many available classes on learning to speak with ALS. To have ALS means this disease is progressive and will gradually get worse. It becomes more difficult to perform daily tasks, for example, getting ready in the morning or walking around. Eventually, there's a need for assistance from loved ones and/or a care provider to help you in this sensitive time. Again, ALS is deteriorating, meaning that it's both physically and mentally damaging. On average, patients only survive 3 years after diagnosis. The disease gets worse as the patient continues to live on. ALS results in total paralysis. Eventually, the body loses control of the muscles under the diaphragm, ultimately leading to death. ALS is a rapid, life-ending disease. There are many societal issues regarding nutrition and respiratory support, as well as life-ending decisions such as assisted suicide or euthanasia. There are more ethical and moral issues using stem cell research to possibly cure and better understand ALS. The National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, part of the National Institutes of Health, is the federal government's leading supporter of biomedical research on ALS. The goal of this research was to find the causes of ALS and to understand the mechanisms involved in the progression of the disease and the development of effective treatments.